Welcome, welcome. Here we are. This is episode number 4 of our Life Mastery Foundations series. So we've been talking about some of the core themes that we have in our life and the areas of life that we really want to kind of pour our energy into, our awareness into, so that we can grow ourselves to be more present, to be more alive, to be more aware. And this is what we're really talking about, and we're going to talk about today. So today we're talking about meaningful relationships, and I wanted to offer this particular journey today in December, because for many of us, we go and visit our families during the holidays. I know when my family of origin was still alive, they're all gone now, but while they were alive, I spent every holiday season with them. It was really meaningful for me, and I think for a lot of us, that is something that we do, right? As we go back and see our parents or our siblings and their families and whatever kind of extended family that we have. And that can be a joyous and beautiful and lovely experience to have. And it can also be really stressful. For some people, seeing their family is really stressful. It's not necessarily really a holiday, right? A vacation. And part of that has to do with our families tend to have what I would call the family energy field. And the family energy field is a conglomeration of all of the different fields of the people who have been involved in it. And it can tend to hold on to patterned behavior. And if you've ever had that experience where you go to see your family, go to see someone in your family, and you all of a sudden are 13 again, or 5 again, or whatever earlier version of yourself, or you witness that in other people. You might witness it in your siblings, or you might even witness it in your parents, that they have reverted to some earlier version of themselves. So this is something years ago when I was a Clarity Breathworker and I was offering monthly breathwork sessions. I always did a session on relationships in December, because this is an opportunity that we all have to actually grow and to heal through interfacing with the family energy field. Because what it can do is it can flush up the things that want to be evolved, are ready to be evolved, can flush up old traumas, old hurts, and so on. And for a lot of people, the holidays, not always a joyous situation, because they may not feel like they belong, they may not feel accepted, they may not feel loved, and yet there may be obligations to gather and be with people. And so if any of this is resonating for you, go ahead and just pop in the chat. And I'd love to hear, who's here, where you're coming in from. I see we're just having a few people popping in. So there's always a time here at the beginning where we're starting to gather. So if you'd like to go ahead and say hi and let us know where you're in from. And if you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the family energy field, because it is something that I think sometimes confuses people initially, and they're kind of like, oh gosh, why do I feel this way, or why do other people feel this way? So we want to unpack some of the aspects of that today. And I'm going to be referring to material from my book, Feminine Sovereignty, 8 Pillars for Regenerating Ourselves and Our World. And here, I'm going to just put in the chat the URL where you can go find out more about the book. It's femininesovereigntybook.com. And you can also purchase the book through that website. If you choose, it'll take you to Amazon. But if you do let us know that you're going to purchase it, you do get some gifts and some follow-up with that. So so we're going to talk about some material from 2 different pillars today that are relevant in particular to meaningful relationships. Hi, Nana. Good to see you. Yeah, love the idea of using this stressful time for finding healing. Exactly. So the thing is, and I will probably be saying some things that you may have already heard before, you may already know on some level, and that's totally fine because repetition and spiraling back around different themes is really important for our healing and our growth. Because the first time you hear something, it may not land for you. You may not be ready. You may not have the level of presence that you need to actually be able to access that insight. You may be, working with other things in your life at that time. And so we spiral around. And one of the key themes of feminine sovereignty, of the book Feminine Sovereignty, and the way that it's organized is about spiral development. So because it's a book, you read it in a relatively linear manner, right? Front, it goes front to back, right? You're going to start in the beginning and go through and get to the back, right? Although when you get this, I do invite you, if you want to just jump to the pillar that you're like, ooh, I need support with that one. That's totally fine. The book does build on it, and I would inspire you and encourage you to spiral back to the beginning if you go forward, because it does build. But I'm also a big believer that your intuition will guide you to what you need and where you're going to go. So that's totally fine also. And just to give you a brief understanding of what the book is and how it unfolds and how it's relevant for us for our conversation today, is that the first 4 pillars are about building the power within. So in my model, sovereignty has to do with us becoming really well resourced, to both in terms of our physical vitality, our energetic vitality, but also our emotional wisdom and our connection to source or to spirit. In human design, we would see this in our strategies and our authorities primarily, although it does show up in other parts of the human design system as well. But we want to be growing our power within so that we have this connection to source, which is inspiring us and helping us to move more from our own heart space and move from our own truth, rather than outsourcing our attitude or behavior or even our identity to outside forces that tell us who we are, what we should do, and what's pertinent for us. Okay, so we want to be really building our own understanding of our inner landscape. And so pillar 1 is about that connection with source and learning how to co-create actively and purposely with source, which is what human design authorities are all about. Then pillar number 2 is emotional wisdom. And this has a lot to do with the emotional solar plexus when we're looking from a human design lens, but it also has to do with understanding the unhealed parts of us and how they can jump out in our lives and influence our communication, influence our relationships, and influence how we feel. Pillar number 3 is about physical vitality, embodiment, and our relationship to the living world. So it has to do with our form and material reality, 3D reality, you might call it, and how we learn to grow ourselves and heal ourselves so that we have the vitality that we need and want to be able to engage with life in a really thriving way. And pillar number 4 is about energetic adeptness and energetic mastery. All of these really influence our relationships, how we can relate to other people. Then we spiral outward into the outer world in pillar number 5, which is all about purpose and contribution. Purpose is really more about the self and how we express the self. And contribution is how we express that purpose out into the world and how we are making our contribution. And then number 6 is communication that connects. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Number 7 is mutually beneficial collaborations, which is how do we work together, right? And then pillar number 8 is about stewarding our planet. How do we evolve ourselves to be the agents of helping to heal our world? That includes each other, but also Gaia herself. So let me just read this little piece about communication that connects. from pillar number 6. So this is the definition of pillar number 6: the ability to listen deeply, to speak clearly, boldly, and compassionately, and the willingness to be influenced by another's point of view. Right? So the ability to listen deeply. This is highly undeveloped in most people. Most people listen to be able to gather whatever it is that they want to say back to people, right? They're not actually listening to what that other person has to say. They are listening to be able to know, well, how am I going to talk to them when they're done talking, right? And this is also where interruptions come from, right? We're like listening, something's happening and we can't even hold on to it long enough. We interrupt them, right? And rather than really listening and holding what they're saying, right? So this is a key skill set for the evolved person, right? This is where we're going on our evolutionary path. I really like nonviolent communication as a form that helps us to grow our capacity to listen to each other. I have a quotation here from Marshall Rosenberg, which is at the beginning of Pillar 6, that says, would you rather be right or would you rather connect? Because usually you can't do both. And so if you're committed to being right, it's really hard if somebody else is presenting a point of view that is different than your own, because you're committed to it and you don't really want to listen to what other people want to say. Or if you are listening, you're listening to be able to beat down whatever it is that they're saying, right? And so we want to evolve out of that so that we can actually move into a form of presence, rather than what I talk about in the book is more like a ping pong game, right? It's like it's playing the communication game to win, right? Which basically means that you're convincing the other person or other people that you're right about something, and you're going to stick with it until they agree with you, right? Or they walk away or you walk away. It's a ping pong game. It's like, I'm right. No, 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 I'm right. Right. And so it's a never ending unwinnable game, actually, because the truth is that usually nobody's right. Usually we have different points of view, and other points of view are valid, just like our own. And so part of what we want with communication that connects is to step into the ability to see multiple perspectives at the same time. And this is what Krishnamurti called the highest expression of spiritual growth, is our ability to hold multiple perspectives at the same time. I was just at a weekend event with Lee Harris and his guides called the Z's, and his musical partner, Devore. And one of the things that he was talking about is multidimensionality, which is what we are evolving into. Is multidimensionality is the ability to hold multiple perspectives at the same time. Because what is multiple dimensionality but multiple perspectives from different dimensions, right? And so as we are growing and evolving, the ability to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, or even to be able to rotate from them, between them, is what we want to do in terms of our spiritual growth. And unfortunately, we've mostly been trained into one dimensionality, which is I'm right. And if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you, or you're uninformed, or you're unenlightened, or something like that. So if we spiral back to what I was talking about at the beginning about the family energy field, this can really get activated unconsciously, right? It's not like you're necessarily planning this or anything like that, but it gets activated unconsciously, so that let's say you have, an unhealed wound about never being recognized by your father, right? And so what you do is you come in and you're trying to, prove yourself, right? By talking about your accomplishments or talking about the different things that you've done. And you're trying to unconsciously get recognized by your dad, right? And so you're trying to assert this to the point where you have an agenda, right? It's like, I want him to see me. I want him to acknowledge me. So be honest with yourself. Have you ever felt that way? If you have, you can pop it in the chat. I know I have. I lived out of that. when I was a younger person a lot. And what happened was through the course of my life was the need for recognition haunted me. And so I was able to be manipulated by this need for recognition. And I'll tell you, that need for recognition is rampant. It's much bigger amongst so many people than you might imagine. It really is. And so we can be manipulated by that. We can like seek out and be attracted to situations where we are getting recognized, but it's not necessarily the best situation for us. So what we want to be able to do, rather than stepping into the family energy field and having this kind of agenda with our family or with your dad in the scenario that I'm spinning out here, right, is that you begin to you recognize yourself. You recognize yourself. You give yourself the thing that you're looking outside of yourself for, right? And you can think of this as reparenting, right? Parenting yourself in a way that you didn't get. But whatever that need is, and this can show up from a human design point of view, is the will center, right? Or also the open throat craves recognition, because the open throat often isn't heard or appreciated unless it's been recognized. Projectors also can crave recognition because projectors need to be recognized in order to be invited. So there's different aspects of our human design that can stimulate this aspect of us. But whatever your design, many people have this. And the best thing that you can do, like I said, is to start to acknowledge yourself, recognize yourself, give yourself, approve of yourself, right? Don't seek it outside of you. And I love this thing I heard from the Dalai Lama once, right? He was like, are you 40? Because if you're 40 or over, the universe has already approved of you, because otherwise you wouldn't still be here. You wouldn't still have a body if the universe didn't approve of you by now. So stop trying to prove yourself, because you've already been approved of. And I'll say this, you can still say that to yourself if you're under 40, but I think it's a really kind of potent thing to take in, to go, hey, you're in a body still. One of the things that the Z's, or Lee Harris's guides, that I had the pleasure and honor to be with last weekend, that they were talking about was, it's easy to die. It's easy to die. People die all the time. And they were talking about exit points and how we have multiple exit points during the course of our life, right? Where we can just decide to go. And which is kind of a trippy thing to think about if you go back and look through your life and go, oh yeah, I could have exited then. I could have exited then. But if you're here watching this live stream, or you're watching the recording later, then you're still here. You still have a body. You haven't taken an exit point, and nothing random has happened that has taken you out. So you're already approved of. You're already approved of. You're already recognized. You're already acknowledged. You're already accepted. And so whatever it is for you, right? Whether you have, an ongoing negative mantra in your head, which many of us do, like not worthy, not enough, not lovable, not acceptable, those things, right? Not pretty enough, not the right shape, not the right education, not the right skin color, whatever it is, right? That thing going on inside your head, right? You want to be able to go, well, okay, that's an old story. That's an old story I inherited from somewhere, and then I implemented it in my subconscious, right? And I can change it. I can change it, right? And one of the things you can do is start to love yourself, approve of yourself, accept yourself, so that when you are in a relationship with another person or other people's, then that's already done. You're not looking to them for that, right? You're not relying on other people for that. Now, I will say alongside this, I do believe that in really healthy, intimate relationships, whether that's a love relationship, a parent-child relationship, a sibling relationship, or close friends, that acknowledgement and recognition and approbation can be extraordinarily powerful, right? It can. To be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged by people who are close to us in a really genuine way can absolutely be very healing and uplifting. So I'm not saying that to kind of be like, especially if somebody offers it to you, not to dismiss it. But even so, one of the ways you become more sovereign is by giving yourself the thing that you need, finding a way to give yourself the thing that you need, right? One of the exercises that I used to give to clients a lot when I did a lot of business coaching, and you can do this for yourself, is to go and do, and this is great because we're coming up on the solstice as well, is to do a little bit of a year review, or it could be a life review, where you go through and you go, gosh, I did this. I did this. Oh, I grew through that. Oh, that was hard, but look what I got from it. This is the gift I received from this challenging situation, right? To be looking at what are the ways that you've grown through your life experience. That can include things like trainings that you've had, or certifications that you've received, or things. It can include things like that, but it's also like, how have you grown through your life experience, so that you can start to acknowledge yourself, right? Because we tend to keep going on to the next thing, or the next thing, or the next thing, and not necessarily really stop and acknowledge ourselves, right? But if you do that and look for evidence of the growth you've already done, look for evidence of your own genius, look for evidence of your own compassionate heart and the love that you have for people. Look for evidence for the contributions that you've made to other people's lives. And if you are somebody who works with clients or with students, you could read testimonials that you have. You could read the emails that you get from people that share with you how much their lives have been improved by their relationship with you, right? Look for evidence and then rewire yourself. We now know, because of neuroplasticity, right, our ability to create new neural pathways in our minds, that we can do that. So this is, like I said at the beginning, this is why repetition is really helpful, because it's through repetition that we are able to rewire ourselves. And so in the book, I talk about the spectrum of expression, which has to do with our relationship to power. I also talk about this when I do my transit reports for human design, and also in relation to a lot of the different, the different archetypes in human design. But let me just explain this briefly. The spectrum of expression that has to do with power is that we have the disempowered expression, which is basically where we're subordinating ourselves to people or situations or authorities, outer authorities. We're subordinating ourselves in some way, and we don't feel like we have the power to change it or to be engaged, right? Or we reject something and we're like, oh, I reject that. I don't like it. I reject it. But it makes us disempowered in relationship to that. Then there's the shadow expression, which is the power over expression, right? The most extreme version of the disempowered expression is victim consciousness, right? Then we could also think of the shadow expression as that perpetrator or predatory energy. Now, the thing is, excuse me, is you might be like, well, I'm not like that. And I'm sure you're not consciously, right? But we've been trained to actually be manipulative and coercive in a lot of ways to get what we want, especially women, especially BIPOC. And the reason for this is that when you've been kind of on the outskirts of power structures, what we've perceived is, well, we have to kind of be covert to get what we want. We have to kind of manipulate things, not let other people know that that's happening, right? This is part of the age of empire that we are evolving out of, right? The age of hierarchical power over, where there's power among just a few people, right? And the rest of us have to try to figure out how to, survive and thrive in that kind of situation. So this is deep in our wiring, people. This is deep in our wiring. So our evolution, though, is to be able to identify it and to heal it, right? And to realize I don't have to do it that way. If I can grow my power within, right, those first 4 pillars, grow my power within, then I don't have to do that, right? I don't have to do that. And then the awakened expression is what you step into, right? When you own your power, when you've got that power within and you own your power, right, you don't need to assert it over other people. One of the things that, another thing that Marshall Rosenberg says is, oh, your opinion of me, none of my business. Right? That's called good boundaries, right? It's accepting other people, accepting them how they are, and then having good boundaries and being like, I am sovereign of my being. I know who I am. I know my value. I know that I'm worthy. I know that I'm lovable. I know these things about myself. And because of that, I can let go of any agenda I have about you being different, and I can have boundaries with any agenda you have about me being different because I'm a sovereign being. Acknowledge you as being whole, capable, right? Of you having your own power within, or you having access to that if you choose to grow it and develop it. And I have that too. And we're sovereign beings here together in this life. And so sovereignty allows us to have acceptance, even if that father figure is not acknowledging you or not recognizing you the way that you wish that they would. And if you can accept them and love them and have compassion for them, recognizing that they are still somewhat caught inside of their own patterns, right? Their own wounds. And you can love them through that. So much better. And this is the awakened expression, right? Is when we're in our own sovereign power and we can step into a different perspective, a different point of view. And when you step into that awakened expression, when you're empowered, it's not empowered to coerce or convince. It's a power to care and to be compassionate, even when somebody else is being snarky in your mind or in reality, right? Is your ability to just shine your love light on them, right? Okay. So what we want to do is be able to move into presence. We want to have presence. And presence means we're in the present moment. Presence, present moment, right? It means we're not referencing the past continually to be able to understand what's happening now. That's what happens in the family energy field, right? As you step in, there's residue from, the ways things were when you were growing up, right? And you step into that residue and everybody's referencing the past. They're not actually in the current present moment. They're referencing the past. So what you want to be able to do is get here and get present, right? What's actually here now, right? What's here now? And the thing is, the way that our psyche works, and it makes sense, right? It's kind of like, oh, this thing is happening. Let me look back into the past and see how can my past help me understand what's happening now? And that can be useful at times, right? But it's not useful if what you're referencing is an unhelpful pattern, right? A pattern of dysfunction, right? And then you're going, oh, I better be guarded against my dad because he's never, ever friggin' recognized me for all the things I ever did for him, right? Right. You don't want to step into that and reactivate that pattern. Ideally, you're not doing that, right? What you're doing is you're stepping in and you go, oh yeah, there's that old wound that I had where I really wanted that from dad. Yeah. You know what? I get it. He never got it from his dad. And he's just, still doing that thing that he does. And I just love him anyway, because he really, in his heart of hearts, he really is a loving person. Right. And you can shower that perspective on that person. And when you do that, right, it creates an energetic template that person can step into that is more loving, that is more in present time. So you can do really powerful work just energetically inside of a situation that could otherwise be kind of, a little bit triggering. Okay. So what about the situation where you're not talking about like a parent or you're a triggered situation of that sort? But when you are in a relationship with somebody who you really love, you care about, and you want to be able to connect with them, but there's some challenges that are involved, right? And maybe you've gotten triggered, maybe they've gotten triggered, maybe some of the emotional energy is up. And how do you navigate that? Well, the first thing to do is to try to calm down. Ground yourself, breathe, go walk around the block, right? Because if the triggers are up, it's very hard to have communication that connects. It's very difficult. So one of the first things to do is to try to move that energy if you can. And you can even just be like, you know what, let's just pause. I want to have this conversation, but I'm feeling like I'm not going to be very receptive to what it is that you have to share in this moment right now. So I'm going to go move my energy, and then let's circle back in an hour or tomorrow or whatever it is, later tonight. So that's one thing, right? Is if the energy is up, usually it's a good idea to help move some of that. And then also, if you have time and you can, do a little reflection, like, what's going inside of me that was so activating for me? Like, why am I so upset by that? Like, what is that about? Okay. So, and if you can tune in and go, oh, that thing where I never felt recognized by my dad, that's what got activated, right? And then you can go, okay, that's the past. It's not even the same person. All right. So let's do this differently. Okay. So that's about preparing yourself, right? And ideally, you with your partner or whoever else is involved is doing the same thing. And this is a way that a couple or a family can grow. I know my kid and I, we have worked on this a lot, and we have gotten pretty smart about being like, now is not the time to talk about this. We do need to talk about it. We're going to circle back around, but we need to be in the right state where we can actually hear each other and being attuned to that. So that's another thing, right? So high quality listening. This is a skill set that, boy, if everybody developed it, our world would be so different. Even if half the people in the world develop it, it would be so different. And from a human design point of view, high quality listening is vital for people who do not have a sacral authority. Okay, so that's our manifestors, our reflectors, and our projectors. Okay, manifestors not always so much if they're really hooked up to their inner guidance, if they're really hooked up to their ability to feel that creative impulse that comes to them from the motor that they have to the throat. That's what makes a manifestor. They have a motor to the throat and no defined sacral. If they're really good at that. But I've known manifestors that have done well by being able to have a high quality listener. Okay, sacral authority is different. Okay, but let's remember that yes, 70% of the population are generators, absolutely. But we also have all of the other types in our lives. So even generators do well by learning how to do high quality listening. And anybody who is not a generator, but in relationship to a generator, is good at learning how to ask sacral questions. Okay, that's another thing. So high quality listening, in my experience, is pretty healing for everybody. Okay, generators, all types. Because how often have we really had somebody really listen, really pay attention without an agenda? So to be a high quality listener, okay, I'm going to give you a few tips here. Is first thing you want to do is really ground yourself. So feel your sit bones. Do this with me for a minute. Feel your sit bones. Move your pelvis around a little bit, right? And feel your sit bones on the ground. If your feet flat on the ground, okay. So this is how you're going to ground yourself, right? So you're creating a relationship with the earth when you do this, right? And you can feel the earth underneath you. And the next thing is try to feel your back body. So try to imagine, go ahead, close your eyes. Let's do this together. Close your eyes. Take a breath in. Allow yourself to adjust, because we are so visually focused most of the time that it takes a minute for our other senses to come online. So see if you can come inside now and sense the back of your body, the back of your head, the back of your shoulders, the back of your waist, the back of your pelvis, the sacrum. See if you can tune into that back space and even the space behind your back. So what that does is it brings your awareness back into the center of your head. Okay. And it pulls you into an awareness of you as a more multidimensional being, because our focal gaze tends to stimulate our left brain, which is not multidimensional. So when we do this, it stimulates the right brain and it helps us to activate our awareness of space. And that right brain energy is not verbal. And so it helps us drop into presence more easily. And when we're in a state of presence, we're able to communicate with people by simply being receptive. And the next step after that, beyond being receptive, is to ask questions that helps draw the person out, right? Tell me more about that. That seems really important to you. Wow, that seems like that was really hard. Do you want to share more about that? Wow. So what do you make of all that? Right? What does that mean to you? Right? Drawing them out, helping them to understand more. Now, this is key if you're doing this with a projector or a reflector or a manifester regarding their authority, because the main thing they need to do is to be able to talk it through so that they can come to their own conclusions about it. Okay, just in terms of authorities. But if we go back and we're talking again about being in relationship with people, and let's say you're, again, let's just go back to the family thing, right? And you're there and you're going to see your sister. You haven't seen your sister all year. You love your sister, and you have a really deep, affectionate feeling for each other. But there's ways that you disagree. Now, I know here in the United States, there are lots of people who are going to go and have family time with people who did not vote the same way in our presidential election. Let's just acknowledge that that's the case. So, given that, how can we connect even if we have really different opinions about things, even if we've made different choices? Because ideally, we still want to be able to connect with our families, right? We still want to be able to do that. So, one thing you might want to do is not talk about that topic, things that are super kind of charged, but you still want to be able to connect, right? Maybe about other things. And so being a high quality listener is going to invite that person, even if they're a little bit like, we have this kind of disagreement about things, right? That we are able to connect anyway. So as you do that, ideally, one of the things that you might want to think about conceptually is to create a shared understanding that includes both people's points of view. Now, this isn't always possible. Okay, sometimes people are really, you just have to agree to disagree, right? You just have to agree to disagree and be like, you know what, but ideally, if you can try to see things from another person's point of view, it really helps break down the barriers. It helps break down the things that make us do this, right? And the thing is, and this is a beautiful insight from nonviolent communication, which is that being able to see things from somebody else's point of view is not the same as agreeing with them. It does not mean you agree. It means that you're willing to step into somebody else's shoes. Because a lot of times when you do that, you're like, wow, gosh, if I saw things that way, I get why, they did this, or why they think this, or why they feel this way, right? But if you're still embedded in your own point of view, right, and you're not willing to kind of go into how they're seeing things, then how they feel doesn't make sense. And it can make you, it can make you irritated, it can make you sad, it can make you enraged because you're still on your side. Ideally, you want to create a shared point of view. I'll give you an example. So I was once in a relationship with a man who I had known for a number of years. And we decided to explore having a romantic relationship. And we had a difficult time, actually. We had a lot of challenge in being able to hear and be with each other. And we finally split up over a situation where we just were at loggerheads, right? And after that, I was really wanting to, I love this man. I still love this man. I just saw him last night. And I didn't like this sense of this disagreement that we had, and this sense that I had of where he just didn't get what I was trying to communicate with him. Like he just didn't get it. And so we worked with a facilitator, and it was really helpful. And she was able to draw, she was a very high quality listener. She was able to draw out of him and draw out of me what our perspectives were. And then the other person got to listen. So sometimes if it's really intense like that, having a facilitator is helpful. But one of the things that came out of that was he just said, I just didn't believe you. Because I told him at one point he was convinced that I was angry with him about something. I was judging him about something. And then he just had a whole perspective of me. And he shared this. And I was like, wow, that was not my experience at all. I was not angry with you at all. I was having a lot of feelings because I was having a memory about something else, had nothing to do with you. And he just said to me, he goes, I didn't believe you. I just didn't believe you. And so he was convinced of his point of view, right? And it wasn't until we had that conversation that we were able to have a shared point of view. I talk about this in my book. So you can go and read about it there if you want to, if you go get my book. So what happened is that he kind of went, oh, and I went, oh. And I was able to understand. I was like, oh, if he really believed that scenario, I could understand why he'd be upset. And then there were other things that came out where he shared things that I didn't know. And I was like, oh, that's why you felt that way. Or that's why you acted that way. Or gosh, my behavior came across to you like that. Wow, I'm sorry. Right? It really was very, very helpful. But we had to drop our defenses. We had to really be willing to listen to each other. We had to let go the need to be right. But that is one of the things that's possible when you come into relationship with each other. And you're like, okay, like Marshall Rosenberg says, would you rather be right or would you rather connect? Because you can't usually have both, right? We both gave up that commitment to being right and made our connection the priority. So that is a recommendation that I have for you with, like, if you go to a holiday and your sister's there and you love your sister, but you don't always agree on things, right? Is to, number one, accept and love, shower with compassion and love, and know that deeper connection is more important than politics. It's more important than a lot of things, unless somebody has done something obviously that where you're really like, wow, that is off the chart in my moral compass. I kind of can't, I can't really deal with that one. You can still find a way to love them, but it might be hard to have really listen in that kind of a situation. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about the G center and the emotional solar plexus, but I want to say hi to those of you who have popped into the chat here, and encourage you to let me know one thing that stood out for you. Did this stir a memory for you? Did this stir a reflection for yourself? What's one thing that stood out from you from what I shared? Whether that has to do with the spectrum of expression and the ways that you may have been experiencing power yourself or power from other people, whether that's how you feel about acceptance and boundaries, whether or not you've started to create boundaries with people and they don't like it and you've had to navigate that, or experiences with being or receiving high quality listening, whatever you might like to do that. I'd really love to hear from you about how that's landed for you. Okay. So I do want to just talk a little bit about the G center and the emotional solar plexus from a human design point of view, because these are two centers that can highly influence our communication. Now, really lots of parts of your human design can, but these are the two that I want to talk about that I feel really have the most influence, and particularly if they're open in your chart. Okay. So when we have open centers in our chart, what happens is that when we're around people who have that center is defined in their chart, then we pick up that energy and we amplify it, right? Pick it up and we amplify it. Now, I have an open emotional solar plexus. And when I was a kid, I grew up, my whole family of origin all had defined emotional solar plexus, all of them. And I picked up and amplified all kinds of emotions. Of course, unconsciously, I had no idea what was going on, but I got to be known as being kind of, volatile, right? And so that kind of imprinted me to a degree around volatility, and also whether that was to be volatile or to want to get away from volatility, right? I had to grow myself to learn how to have difficult conversations where I felt they might become volatile, right? Or somebody might walk away. And so I really had to grow myself around that. So if you have an open emotional solar plexus, or you have people in your life that have that, just know that their experience when you're communicating sometimes can be, if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, can be influenced by whatever energy you're holding. Right. And it can be difficult for them. Like if you're feeling a lot of grief or anger, right, it can be difficult for them because they're picking it up and they're like, wow, I have to navigate all this energy that isn't mine. So this is a situation where, again, you might need to separate for a little while to be like, oh, okay, how can I drop that other person's energy and kind of get back into my own center? Another thing you can do is to go and do some energy work. Again, that grounding that I was talking about, feeling the backspace, but also doing an energy practice from Kundalini Yoga. That's what I teach. You may have other energy practices that you do, but the basic idea here is that you want to be able to fill your own energy field with your own soul light, and not to so much be so susceptible to other people's energy, right? So that's one of the things that you can do when you feel that way. But if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, realize that your energy is going to influence the people around you, particularly those who have an open emotional solar plexus. So one of the things you can do is become more mindful about what is the emotional tone that you're expressing right now, right? Not to make yourself bad or wrong at all. Yeah, you might be angry about something. You might have a lot of grief about something. That's all fine, right? But notice if you're around other people, right? And especially open, emotionally solar plexus people, and see if you can mitigate your energy, particularly if you're going to step into what might be a difficult conversation, right? So this is why energy work is so important, because it helps us to gain more command over our interactions with each other. That's why in all of my programs, we do energy work. Like in the Sovereign Sisterhood, we do a Kriya Kundalini Yoga practice every month, and we're invited to be doing that regularly throughout the month. Ideally, you're doing it every day, but even if you're doing it a few times a week, but especially to have that as part of your toolkit, if you're going to go into what might be a difficult conversation or a difficult situation, right? Again, entering into the family energy field potentially, right? So that can really help you to uplift your energy and give you more command in your conversations with other people, help you to be more sovereign. And that's true really for whether you're defined or whether you're open. And then the G center is the center for love and lovability, identity, and direction. And so when you have this open on you, it doesn't mean that you don't have an identity. Okay. Um, I hear people say that. It's like, I have no identity. It's like, no, actually, you do. It's just that it can be variable, right? And you might have to be revisiting your sense of self and your self concept and taking more command of it, actively creating it more frequently than somebody who has it defined. But what can happen in our relationships and in our communication is that the person with the open G center can kind of merge into the person with the defined G center, right? Can kind of merge with them. And then they can kind of take on some of the identity and the direction, and whether or not that person feels lovable about themselves also, right? They can take that on and not even realizing that they're then amplifying that energy and they think it's theirs. And this is where we can get entangled. This is where we can get codependent with each other. It's one of the places. So again, looking at, your human design chart, and then the human design chart of whoever you're going to have this kind of potentially difficult conversation with, and seeing how are the energetics potentially influencing you. And if you do find that the energetics influence you, then, if you find that you're kind of falling into that, then, go and take some time away from each other, do some self-reflection, do an energy practice where you're releasing the other person's energy out of your field and coming back to center. Yeah. So those are two places in particular from a human design point of view that you can be that you can be really influenced. Okay. So, all right. I would love to hear from those of you who are here, who, how this is landing for you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions at this point. Okay, so I'm going to say hi to Nona. I saw her earlier. Hello, Peace Mama. And hello, Dominique. Dominique says, making me aware that I need to work on growing my giving, high quality listening, grounding, and energy work. Exactly. So this is one of those things that I think a lot of us kind of know, but we don't necessarily do. We don't necessarily take the time to do. And we also, even if we know it and we've even kind of learned it, do we use the skill? Right? Because we have a lot of skills and we have a lot of tools, but are we actually using them or not? Right? That's the thing, is using things like grounding, right? Using things like feeling your backspace or letting go of your agenda, moving into presence, things like that, right? Do we actually use it, especially when we need it, which is when things can get a little bit tense, right? Because, being able to have a difficult conversation requires us to be able to come into presence. Because if we're in a patterned loop, the difficult conversations don't go well. Pretty much guaranteed. Okay. All right. So Peace Mama says, this is very helpful. I can use my energy for peacemaking. Yes, absolutely. Use your energy for peacemaking. If you can just have peace in your heart, you can influence a whole conversation, whether that's with one person or a whole room. This is why when you are working to access the higher realms, whether you want to call it 5D or the light realms or the unified field, or what we call in the yoga traditions, the great cosmic womb, the Varanyagarbha, right? When we're looking to access those higher states of being, right? We want, one of the ways to do that is to be growing peace inside of ourselves. I know with one of my main spiritual teachers, who's a light being named Oren, channeled by Sanea Roman, I've been doing multiple peace meditations with him where I connect with my divine self and the peace of my divine self. And so peacemaking is absolutely essential. Thank you for mentioning that. It's so easy to get pulled into other people's energy. Yeah, it can be. Absolutely. Especially if you have a habit of it, right? I've been working on protecting my energy and grounding. Beautiful. That's great. Peace, Mom. So absolutely, is that peace is really critical. I'm just gonna put in the URL where you can get my book again. It's just feminine sovereignty book.com. And if you do buy the book through the website, you'll get extra bennies from us. So you will buy it from Amazon, and you can get it as a hard copy, like the one I just showed you, or you can get it as a Kindle. So you can do either one. Okay, so I would love if anybody else has comments, things that landed for you. I would love to hear that, and I just want to share a few more announcements with you. So next Friday, so a week from yesterday, next Friday on the 20th of December, I'm doing another live stream here on YouTube and on Facebook. That one will be on Facebook. That is about, it's for the solstice. It's for the Capricorn solstice. And so I will be focusing on the winter solstice because this is where I live. But all of you in Down Under are welcome to come, and you can just kind of translate it for yourself because a lot of the themes are similar, even if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. Okay. Some of them not so much, but some of them are. So I highly encourage you to come to that. And it'll be a way for us to be harvesting from our year. I know this was a really intense year for a lot of us. So many people I know have been in deep processes. A lot of healing has taken place. I know I had tremendous amount of inner healing that happened from other lives during the course of 2024. You've probably been on your own healing journey. And so we want to do some harvesting of that and acknowledging, you know, how we were talking before about recognition and so on. So this can often be a balm to our soul and to the places in us where we felt like we really didn't get what we needed. So we're going to do some harvesting. We're going to do a ritual. We're going to do some intention settings. Because it's at the solstice. The solstice is a pivot point, right? We're at the apex of night here in the northern hemisphere, or the apex of day in the southern hemisphere. And then we're going to pivot because the days are going to start getting longer every single day from that day. So it's great for us to set intentions at that time because we're going to start moving into more expansion. We're not necessarily going to feel it immediately, but it doesn't matter because so much happens in the subconscious. So we're going to be doing that. And I will be sharing with you some new things that are going to be happening for 2025. I am going to change the way that I am doing my transit reports. Going forward, I'm going to do one monthly transit report, which will be released for you a few days before the month begins. And then for those of you who want to, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about the transits near the beginning of the month. That is something that will require a small investment. It will be a bonus for those of you who are in the Sovereign Sisterhood, but it'll be open to others if you want to participate in that. I will also be offering the Mastering the Neutrino Stream program, which is about how to use the transits. And then we'll actually be working with that and having a working session where you can learn how to use the transits for you in relation to your own chart or in relation to the charts of other people in your lives. So we'll get to do some more hands-on practice with all of that. So I'm excited about offering that to you beginning in January. So you can be looking for that coming maybe by the end of the year, maybe early in January. So I'm excited about that. We'll also be offering a new updated version of the Sovereign Sisterhood, which I am working on right now, and is our online community. And it's really more than a membership. It's really a soul tribe. It's a soul tribe of us who are wanting to evolve ourselves in the context of Pluto moving into Aquarius and all of the different changes that are going to be happening in the next few years. And so we're going to be talking about that in human design. The lore is around 2027, but actually the big shift that's really kicking it all off is happening in January of 2025 when Pluto moves into the gate 41, which is the initiating codon of our DNA. And so Pluto is going to be initiating an upgrade of our DNA as we move into that gate 41. So the Human Design New Year, which is when the sun moves into the gate 41, is happening on, I think it's the 22nd of January. Also, two of the outer planets are going to be changing gates, which is a big deal. And I think it's in 2025, it might be 2026 also, but they're also changing astrological signs. And so we've got massive changes that are coming up. Some of you may be noticing kind of what's happening in the outer world with visitations that apparently are happening for us, not just in New Jersey, although the news is all focusing on New Jersey. It's also happening up and down the West Coast, where there are unidentified flying objects that are showing themselves. And so we'll see how that all unfolds. I have a certain idea about that, but who knows, right? Who really knows? But this is a great time for us to be gathering in community, for us to be growing ourselves with the support of each other. And we're going to be working with the themes of aligning with cosmic consciousness, partly through the transits and partly through the incarnation cross, which is what is going to be happening for our first semester in the Sovereign Sisterhood. Then in the second semester, we're going to be looking at the sovereignty of self, working with the first four pillars of feminine sovereignty, and also with our human design. And the third trimester is going to be about growing our soul tribe connections, growing our relationships in community, both within the sisterhood and with our outer lives. So I'm excited for what's going to be happening. I'm excited for how this is unfolding. I know sometimes when you look at things that are happening in the outer world, it can look kind of scary. I just want to say all of the inner guidance that I'm getting and the guidance that I'm getting from the guides is that things are not as they seem, and that many things will be revealed for us over time. So be patient, take care of yourself, take care of your physical body, take care of your mental body, take care of your emotional body, take care of your energy body. Go ahead and get yourself a copy of Feminine Sovereignty, 8 Pillars for Regenerating Ourselves and Our World. It is a step-by-step path for awakening. I didn't know this when I wrote this book, but it really is a book for the Aquarian age. It's like a guidebook for the Aquarian age. Oh, and that's another thing is that early next year, I'm going to be launching a new podcast, Feminine Sovereignty, a guidebook for the Aquarian age. So lots of really good stuff coming. Nana, thank you so much for your kind words. She's just sharing that being a part of the Sovereign Sisterhood has been great. It's a great space to connect with others and like minds, and that she recommends my book. She's in our, we have a Feminine Sovereignty book club too. Okay. So delightful to be here with you today. Delightful to be here with those of you who are watching the replay later. And let's just make the decision. Okay. Let's just make the decision that 2025 is going to be an awesome year. Even though we don't know what it is, even though it's unpredictable, even though, things may look dire, let's just decide. Okay. And you can have command over that inside of your own experience, even if things outside of you feel turbulent. All right. Many blessings. Much love, my friends. I hope to see you next Friday at our solstice event. Okay. Bye for now.